What's up, everybody? One Fun Guy podcast live in the studio tonight. I have a bunch of guests tonight, so I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves, and then we'll get going on what we're going to talk about tonight. So who's ever up? Lilia, you could start.
Okay, sure. Hey, everyone, I am Lilia, the Inner Demon Crusher. What I do is raise mental health awareness through performing arts and comics. So I make music, especially heavy metal, with a lot of mental health awareness themes in the lyrics. And I do performances with my sword spinning routine. And I have the Inner Demon Crusher comic book, which is basically a really fun, twisted take on a musician's journey of battling their own inner demons to live in freedom. And I hope that our discussion resonates with all of you today.
Where can they find the comic?
Oh, yeah, good question. So this comic book, the best place to get it is from Amazon because it'll ship it right to you. I also have digital copies available on my website, and I have a link to a free demo of it. But the best way to get a physical copy is search this title on Amazon, Lilia, the Inner Demon Crusher. This volume is called Workaholism versus Food Porn. You can tell from the title, it's very satirical. So yeah, workaholism versus food porn, that represents how we get so stressed by trying to meet these impossible demands on us. And we start looking for sweet escapes, like food porn is a metaphor of the addictive and obsessive stuff that we get into to try to cope with overwhelming stress and inner demons that we haven't addressed at their core yet. Well, yes, search for that on Amazon. Lilia, the Inner Demon Crusher, Workaholism versus Food Porn.
Perfect.
All right. Maddie, you're up.
Hi, guys. My name is Maddie. I am a master's of social work student, peer support specialist, qualified professional, two-time award winner, and founder of J&E Support Group. We are a mental health-based advocacy mental health nonprofit. We have both in-person and virtual groups, as well as advocacy events we are planning. And we'd like to grow into more advocacy. We can be found at jesupport.org on all social media, and then I advocate on my personal page, Maddie Andrews, as well.
Awesome. Elliot?
Hi, everyone. My name's Elliot Mondry. I am the co-owner of Calamity Comics and head writer. We are a mental health-focused comic book publishing company, and we write the series You Never Know, which deals with the concept of how you never know what other people are going through behind closed doors and how strong of a hold anxiety can have on somebody.
That's
Awesome.
cool. Where can we find that?
They can find us online at Calamity Comics Official on our website www.calamitycomics.net. So feel free to check us out.
I want to do it. I want to get.
And I'm everybody's favorite uncle, Uncle Jimmy, the host of Uncle Jimmy's podcast. I do a couple segments during the week. I do Mental Health Mondays. I do Wednesday Spotlights, and then I do just weekend conversations on Saturdays. So I'm excited to have everybody on, especially when it comes to mental health. We all have our communities, right? And as we bring them together, right, we get bigger communities, stronger communities, right? And one of the biggest things I talk about is crushing the stigmas, right, till there's none left. And then when there's none left, we're still going to scream and shout about mental health because it's so important.
I agree. So since we're all in a group together now and we're all chatting, we're going to have an open discussion and conversation about this. When you guys think of mental health, what are some of the umbrellas that you look at? Are we looking at something to just simple, maybe anxiety, or are we looking to the spectrum of somebody who might have, schizophrenia and extreme bipolar? Like, where do we discuss this and where do we want it to go? Obviously, some of you guys have way more knowledge and information than the others, but I'll leave it open to you guys to discuss. So we'll start off wherever we see this going.
Yeah, and I think we've all, we the reason we have mental health comics and podcasts is because we've all suffered, in not suffered, but live with mental health, right? And I have anxiety and depression. And so on the show we bring on just about everybody that they're therapists, doctors, people that are living with schizophrenia. Maddie got a story that which he's living with, and it's just powerful that coming together, all of us, whether you have anxiety or depression, but these communities that we're building, whether it's through comic books, whether it's through podcasts, or just getting out in your community and speaking to people and letting people know that you're not in this alone, right? For me, I I've had everybody on from all the spectrums, and like Pete, I don't even know what Pete has. Pete has like ADHD, ADD, right? Pete just goes and goes and goes. Pete's great, but Maddie, let them know about you and what you have.
Okay, I have what I was called schizoaffective bipolar type, which means I have symptoms of both schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, along with generalized anxiety, PTSD, and OCD. And I do a lot of work like Jimmy, like breaking the stigma. Like typically when people hear words like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, they have these like misconceptions about what people like me may be like especially the word schizophrenia. People think we're going to harm you or we're dangerous, which is not always the case. So I talk about my story pretty publicly just to break down that stigma. And also, if somebody out there hears me and hears about my recovery journey and hears of how successful I am, maybe you can give it a little bit of too long their recovery journey.
That's amazing. It's very important.
Yeah.
So what are some things that, like, obviously with Lilia and Elliot, you guys have the comic books. What are some things that you guys do to bring awareness to the community? Is it something that is a planned thing, or do you guys kind of go with the flow? Like, what's your take on how you bring it to the forefront?
Lilia, do you want to go first?
Oh, sure. Yeah, ladies first, I guess. So, yeah, what I do is that I make things really whimsical and fun and colorful. So this comic book, it is something that I made as a parody of my own journey, and it has themes that are very dark and dramatic, like here how it feels like the inner demons are just like leeching on you and feeding on you. Let me see where I first introduced the characters. Oh, actually, I'll stick with this page. It's like a spiral, right? This is how you're spiraling into your own descent. And it's a very heavy and potent kind of concept. But at the same time, there are also pages where it's very satirical. Like over here on this part is really funny, where the character is like under a ton of stress and getting really depressed, and her friends and said, oh, you need to work less and just go party hardy with us. And they're like, let's go cruising for a boozing. And she's like, this is stupid but amusing. Over here, this page represents like these weird new agey things like magic shrooms, and the idea some people are spreading, you just need to do some yoga and you'll be all healed, oversimplifications and snake oil salesman kind of BSy solutions that are not based on real science, but that, I don't know, sometimes people think that they work or whatever, like frivolous experimentation is what these two pages represent. Next page after that goes, okay, bad trip. How about I go to some scientifically proven medicine at the hospital? Pills for You Medical Center. This page represents, they should do the trick. Now I feel more sick. Well, that represents people trying to just find a magic pill solution to their suffering and, medicating themselves with something that, sure, it may be prescribed by a medical professional, but it's really just trying to be a Band-Aid. It's not really addressing anything to the root cause. On this page, that's a spiral descent of all the things that she has tried that didn't work. She's saying, man, I tried being perfectionist and making everything perfect, doing things right. I never meet the standard. I tried drowning my sorrows in booze and other substances. It doesn't work. I've tried following the rules. I've tried breaking them. None of that has worked. This demon claw is still reaching for her. All that stuff. By the end, she has her bleeding out your emotional wounds and the revelations, and then ultimately goes back to the power of heavy metal, because of course I'm in the metal band Carcasa, so I did make my own band, make a cameo in this book. But it's a lot of, I perceive it as leading by example, because the best example that I possibly have of how to navigate mental health challenges in the real world is my own example. How finding your passion gives you the keys to the freedom that you're looking for. And of course, more in the realm of things like anxiety, depression, mindset issues like imposter syndrome and toxic perfectionism, social isolation too, a lot of social anxiety we get into. It doesn't cover as much the spectrum of things like bipolar or schizophrenia or dissociative identity disorder. Not as much things like that, more so, I guess you can say, more quote common issues like anxiety and depression. But that's why it's very relatable. And of course, even if somebody does have something more substantial like schizophrenia, well, they probably have at least some amount of anxiety within that, so it's still relatable.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so, Lily, let me ask you, you touched on it first, and you said being a perfectionist, right? And having that, where does one draw the line, do you think, of someone who's just a hard worker and then somebody who can't let it go until it's absolutely perfect?
You know what? I would say this page really summarizes it. Whatever. If your discipline leads to more freedom. And I think that that's the goal of having discipline and high standards, is that ultimately the end of the road should be more freedom, not that the discipline steals your freedom. So if it's like you're locking yourself away to practice your music, for example, or work on your business, whatever it is, and if you feel like that's restricting yourself a lot, and all you're getting from that, let's say at the end of the year, you just feel more restricted and you feel like you're having a harder time relating to anyone else, then that's a sign that your discipline is going into that toxic perfectionism territory, because you're not freeing yourself. Whereas if your idea is like, okay, I'm going to spend this amount of time just really disciplining myself, let's say for the next 6 months, to work on a project. Right now, Carcasa is working on our 4th studio album. There's a lot of discipline. There's a lot of sacrifice. Like, okay, we don't always go out and do the fun stuff. Sometimes we just need to practice. And, in the moment that can feel restrictive, but at the end of the road, that is more freedom, because we're giving ourselves the ability to keep doing what we love and give our audience something that they relate to. We're giving ourselves a path to make more friends and inspire people through our music. So I think that that's the gauge. Like, does your discipline lead to more freedom or more restriction?
Okay. That's a good point. Does anybody else have anything to add to that?
I think ultimately, if what you're doing is preventing you from fully living out other areas of your life, like it's just isolating you from work, from friends, from other things that you would normally be doing, I think that's where that differentiation comes in. Is it consuming you, or is it adding to your life? So if it's consuming you, then now it's detrimental. And if it's able to add to your life, then it can help you live a more fulfilled life.
Yeah, I think that's so true, Elliot, because I think if you stop breaking plans with friends, right, or family, and you want to, get the work done, you want to get it done, and you concentrate and, keep making those mistakes of canceling plans, thinking that, it's not affecting me, but it starts affecting not just you, but your family and friends and everybody else that you're drawing away from. And like you said, I think the big thing you hit on was, you want it to add to your life, not to subtract from your life.
Yeah, I think it should give you the freedom to be who you are, like freedom to be yourself, not feeling like you need to cut away parts of yourself, just fit some kind of mold. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So let's keep the comic book thing going. Elliot, you wrote a comic based on some personal stuff as well. What was that process like for you?
So the story for me, I just wrote it as essentially a therapy exercise when I was trying to understand what I was going through. And, when anxiety is really loud, we've all been through some sort of mental health issues where anxiety and those inner voices are very loud, and they might be positive, they might be negative. I would write down those thoughts I was having as this character and try to remove myself from the narrative and just write the story as if I'm talking about a friend, and write from a third person perspective what I was going through, and just try to understand what was happening and put a name to it, and put dialogue to it. And all of a sudden I was writing this character going through different scenarios that I was experiencing, and I felt if I could write it down and understand it, I could better myself and understand what I was going through. But I figured if it could help me, it could help others. So I felt like I owed it to not only myself but to the community and other people who are going through the same thing, that you're not alone in this. And if we can talk about it more, put it in words, put it in writing, or at least put it to visuals with artwork, then more people may or may not talk about it, but at least more people will be aware of it, and it can start opening up discussion around what is otherwise a very taboo subject. So,
Yes.
like you asked earlier, what do we do for the community and all that stuff? We go to comic conventions and signings and other shops and try to spread the word about the story and mental health, and just talk to people, because the more we talk about it, the less strength it has on us and less power it has over us. And then we can really just open up and, just all realize we're all going through this and we're all in this together.
Okay.
I like
So
what
as
you
far as the
said about,
process,
No, for sure.
I like what you said about talking about it more, and it may not, because it is taboo. I like the word that you said, taboo. Mental health is very stigmatized. It is not talked about enough. And a lot of times when people reach out, it's all in your head, or get over it, or shame, or something like that. So I can appreciate, you writing this comic book about your own story. I think that's awesome.
I agree. It's very good, both of you guys, to do that, to express yourself that way, and especially because of the fact that it's relatable, right? People like comic books as young as kids that could just start reading. Sometimes their very first reads are comic books. So those that are out there, they'll come across more and more of them as they get older and kind of understand it better. So I think it puts a perspective on the youth as well.
Yeah, and I think it's one that we've never had before, right? You have comic book now, comic books that are diving into the mental health field in it's powerful because a kid could pick that up, 10, 11, 12, an older adult could pick that up and see it and say, hey, I've been going through these same things, right? In I love what you said, Elliot, that was, you started as a therapy thing, and it turned into what it did. And not just that it helped you found a way that it can help the community and help others, right? That's what we do in mental health, right? We try to help as many people as we can. And I love it. I love the community. It's one of the most, responsive communities. Everybody wants to get involved, right? Everybody wants to talk about it, and it's awesome. But I think the biggest things we have to do is, like, what the two of you guys, Lilia and Elliot, are doing is, putting pen to paper, right? Putting it out there where people can actually pick it up and read it. And that's awesome. I appreciate everything that you guys are doing. That's from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah, you know what is really funny, how there's this expression, oh, it's all in your head. It's like, look at it this way. If you break a leg, then it's all in your leg, but it's still something you have to heal, right? It's like, how is it any less valid if it's in your head compared to if it's in your leg, your arm, your stomach, or whatever? Like, how does you take your head everywhere with you? I've always heard that, oh, it's all in your head, but I take it everywhere. So clearly it's an issue they have to fix. And it's you could say is even more serious because, for example, like I injured my hand a couple years back, but I was able to kind of adapt, use my left fingers a little less often. I've broken an ankle before, and you could kind of adapt and use that foot less, but your head, you can't use your head less. You have to use your head in literally everything you ever do. Okay. Someone can break a leg and, for the next few months, not use it as much. And honestly, for a lot of people, life goes on fairly normal because in this day and age, some people still have physical jobs, so we can say the majority of people still have these days have more mentally dominant jobs than physical. So for a lot of people these days, they can still do their work even with an injury to one limb. Whereas if someone has an issue with their mindset, nothing you do will be as high quality anymore. That damages everything you can possibly do in work and personal life and everything. So if it's all in your head, yeah, I agree. It is all in your head, which is exactly why it is perhaps the most serious health issue that you need to address with yourself.
Yes, I agree. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but since we're on it, I was an 80s kid, right? Like I was born in 1980 and I grew up in the 80s and 90s. And our parents' generation, if you had something going on that was bothering you, they would say the same thing, right? Get over it, right? Just do your thing. And
Suck it up.
Right. And when you don't have an outlet sometimes, where I think this generation now is very blessed that we're able to do the things that we're able to do and talk about the things we're able to talk about, especially like this. Like I have a podcast, Uncle Jimmy has a podcast. So I don't write a comic book or anything, but this is my creative outlet to express my views to the world. And I love talking about this kind of stuff because my generation was more hard-nosed, right? It was my parents' generation before that. They didn't know what mental health was, right? That was at the forefront of it. They couldn't figure things out. They just dealt with it. And if you really had bad psychosis or you were really mentally challenged, they just said you're crazy. And that was it. That they deemed you as a nut, and that's how you went about it. Don't talk to the crazy guy.
Oh yeah, straight jackets and all that stuff.
Right.
Therapy, lobotomies, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
It's very sad that historically mental patients have had even worse treatment than physical health patients, right? Because let's say if it were really far back, like the 1800s, you had some physical ailment like tuberculosis. The doctors did their best to treat you. You had a mental health ailment like schizophrenia, you just have like the worst treatment. You'd be literally tortured. And they even made kind of a sport out of torturing mental patients back in the day in the asylums. It's very small.
It really wasn't that far back because the Supreme Court case was
it's not that far back.
Was signed in 1999. People were still in institutions in 1999, and it was like the 50s and 60s and the 1900s where this was really rampant. People were doing lobotomies and eugenics.
Like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Yeah, that was in the 70s, and they were talking about what was happening in their modern time, and that's not that long ago at all. Yes, so that is very true. It's not long ago at all.
But I think as years go on, right, and the big thing now is, you can say 70s, 80s, 90s, right? Our parents, right, weren't given the tools because they didn't know, right? So now, us being 80s babies and growing up in the 80s and 90s, and we have, a limited amount of tools, right? But now we're gaining more. And the generation coming up now has so many, right? Whether you go to TikTok, whether you go to Facebook, whether you go to comic books now too, right? Podcasts, you have a bit of everywhere, right? But again, it's still, the stigma is still there and nobody wants to talk about it. Like, when I go into work, I say it to people all the time, like, how you doing today? And everyone tells you I'm okay, right? We literally have to say to them, like, how you really doing? What's up, Pete? Pete just woke up.
We got Pete on, so he made it.
What's going on, guys? Sorry about that.
Much.
Late to the party. How y'all doing?
Good.
So I was saying with people in work, right? And that's one of the biggest things is just making sure, because everybody will tell you they're okay, right? In probably 99% of us walking through life, right? This journey of life, we all have something going on, whether it's mentally, physically, emotionally, right? There's something going on. So I say to everybody, be kind. You never know what somebody's going through. Don't try to walk in anybody's shoes, right? Walk alongside them in this journey. Pick them up when they fall. You know, we need to do this together. And that's the frustrating part, because there's so much strife going on in the world, wars going on, everything, you know, it's tough. So,
and that's
there's
why I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, there's so many industries of work, right? Where if you address your mental health, you will lose what you have. That's how bad it is. You have to bottle it in and deal with it, because if you seek help, now you're a liability. The companies will just say, listen, we can't have you in this state of mind. And I love the companies that are starting to adapt, mental health days and have psychologists come in and talk to their people. And it's an awesome thing to see, because there are so many jobs out there now where if you address the issue and you really have something going on and you talk to somebody about it, well, now you're a liability to the company.
Well, I say it all the time, right? Oh, sorry, Maddie.
My previous career, this was the case. It was bottled in. It was suffer through it. Because you just closed, then you're just going to be shut down. The process will not be renewed. But now I work in behavioral health, with mental health, substance use, abuse, things like that. And it's accepted, and it's acknowledged. It's a part of who we are, because there's people who've been into things like this have their own lived experience. And it's nice to be in an industry where I can openly say how I feel, and it's okay. Like, mental health days are okay. It's just it's a refreshing change.
Yeah, I've had so many, people in law enforcement on, and they talk about, most of them now are out of work from PTSD and their struggles with depression and anxiety. But they say it, right? They didn't go to the boss because they didn't want to get, thrown off the force. They didn't go to the boss because they didn't want to be put in a rubber room on paperwork, right? But think of it this way. So the local municipalities, right, rather have somebody with mental health issues that's carrying a gun and a badge, not address it with them, right? Because they're gonna get in trouble and taken off the job. So they rather not address it, and then rather let them loose back into the community, right? So it's one of those things where cops, firefighters, EMTs, those people are going into the worst of the worst situations, right? And there's still there's stigmas there where you can't talk about it because you'll be taken off the job. Even and to me, it's like these people are supposed to be protecting us, 24/7, 365. And if they can't go to their bosses or go to, a psychiatrist that's going to treat them the right way, everyone's going to keep quiet and not talk about it. They rather just keep it and internalize it. We all know what happens when you internalize it. You can only push it down so much till it blows up. And then when it blows up, you're going to either hurt yourself or hurt everybody around you, or hurt everybody around you and yourself. And that's what we don't want.
Yeah, the scary thing is, in the context of law enforcement, we see on the news how it literally blows up. It's a very sad reality that if an officer is struggling with their mental health and they can't address it, they can't get the help that they need, they have to bottle it up, and then one day it will literally explode in fire, literal fire, and it'll cause catastrophe. It's literally the shot heard around the world, and it's on the news worldwide, and people start losing faith in the police. There's this whole defund the police campaign going on with some of the political activists, and it's very sad because it doesn't have to be that way. If mental health was okay to talk about, if it was not stigmatized in any industry, including law enforcement, nobody would need to even think about defunding the police. That'd be a terrible idea. It'd be terrible for the country. But some people have lost so much faith in the police, and I really think the root cause of that is lack of addressing mental health issues when they come up.
You know, and
Yeah.
it's that way too with a lot of fields, right? The medical field,
Yeah.
especially doctors and nurses,
Yeah.
they're in the same boat, right? If they say that they have any type of issues, they'll lose their licenses. They won't be able to practice.
Yeah.
You won't have nurses. So they're in a very, a malleable field too, where they can't go to their bosses, their supervisors, and say, "Listen, something's going on," because they will lose their job essentially. So there's a
And they
lot of
see that
fields
front and
out
center
there,
every day.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
They see
Yeah.
the
You
mental
know,
health, front and center every day. I guarantee probably 40% of those patients in an emergency room, 50% of those patients in an emergency room coming through with a mental health crisis or a mental health issue.
Sure.
And then they have to go home and deal with it, right? And when they're pushing it down, right? Who's gonna take it on? It's gonna be their kid when they get home, their wife when they get home, their partner when they get home, right? Because they can't have that healthy outlet at work to say, hey, you know what, I'm having issues. And it's okay. They should be able to sit across from another, doctor or someone at the hospital and say, hey, you know what, I just need a couple mental health days. I need to get my head back on track, a couple of days off. I'll be back in a couple of days. What's wrong with that?
Mhm.
Everything.
But like you
Or
said,
take
they
it one
take their license away. What'd you say?
Think about it this way. Everything's wrong with that because when you say those things exactly like y'all just said, they demonize you. Oh, well, you can't have
Oh,
problems like that. Cops do the same thing like that too. You can't say anything like that either because these guys make these split decisions every single day. People don't realize the things that they go through. EMTs are probably the most highest out of them if you think about it because they see it at a rapid rate. They're seeing things so fast that they're not allowed, they can't handle that kind of stuff. Most humans are not equipped to handle the things that the EMTs are seeing, though. Like they're seeing so many traumatic things so fast, so quickly, but no one asked them ever how they're doing because if they did, oh, well, you're demonized. You can't have these problems. You're not able to control your emotions. Oh, your mental health are these reasons. So we demonize all these things because either we don't know enough about it or we just don't want to take care of the problem. Just think about all the school shootings too. What's the number one thing everybody lists? Oh, well, they had some kind of issues or they were spouting all these wild things online, and then everybody just goes, okay, well, we'll just sweep it on the rug after we mention it. And that's the scary part, the whole thing.
Yeah, that's a good point, Pete. And speaking of which, let's take a break. Pete, introduce yourself to the group. I know you hopped in. Let everybody
Right.
know who you are. We did our intros earlier. You missed it, so we'll let you in on it.
All right, guys. Well, I'm Pete, host of Pete Drink Society. You can find me pretty much wherever you find your podcast at. I do interviews one-on-one with people anywhere from your psychotherapist to your everyday person. It's been a fun time. Been doing it about a year and a half now, and I love every minute of it.
Okay, so let me ask this question. I'm going to ask Maddie, Pete, and Uncle Jimmy. You guys are in the field and you see this all the time. When you guys have guests on, like therapists and psychotherapists, what do they say about it? Like, what is their opinion of this? Like, obviously, you can relay the messages to us, but how do they feel about the importance of this and having people like where do they turn and where do they go?
Man, a lot of them tell you that there's no place for a lot of them to go, honestly. And the crazy part is that a lot of your therapists actually have their own therapist. So I know a lot of people don't want to hear that. These guys deal with these things that they hear that you're telling them, and then they go get someone to talk to them about it. So a lot of them turn to their own therapists. But that's the same thing though for a lot of people. A lot of people don't know where to go. That's a real great question though, because a lot of people don't even know where to start. And that's the hard part about it. Is a lot of people don't know where to go, so that's where they end it. They're like, well, I'm going to go to drugs or I'm going to go to alcohol and try and hide these problems, and then that's where addiction starts building from. So it's like I said, a lot of people don't want to hear that though. They don't want to hear that your therapist has their own therapist because they don't think about it that why they have their own therapist is because they're dealing with all your problems, so then they have to go to somebody else.
I'm getting my master's in social work, and most of my cohort are therapists. They're going to get their therapy license. And in the school, they teach us strongly about self-care, taking care of ourselves. That's the biggest piece of feedback I get in my supervision. And most of us do have our own therapists. And one of my best business partners and dear friend is a therapist who has her own therapist because we have to take care of ourselves too. And it can be hard to find those resources. Like you wouldn't want to get a therapist in the community you're practicing in, probably. You would have to go outside of your community. I know I do. And I seek therapy outside of my own community, so you don't have that like what is the word, like conflict of interest. So yeah, Pete is definitely very true. That is very true.
Sure.
So, most of the ones I have on, are upfront and honest, and they'll tell you they have their own therapist. And there's a few of them on the side, right? Once we cut, we're not talking live anymore, we're not recording, they'll tell me, I fucking, excuse my language, I
No, go ahead.
internalize it. I internalize it, they say. It's not something they would put out there. And, I'm not going to sit here and mention this one, that one, but there's been more than I can count on a handful. And I've done probably 70 plus interviews, so there's more than a few that tell me they internalize it because, again, they're like, well, they suffer with this, complex almost of, if I'm supposed to be treating you right, I shouldn't have any problems. And that's when I tell them, like, we all have problems. It's okay, right? But the first thing you should be doing is, if you're practicing it, you should be able to turn around and talk to one of your peers or even get your own therapist, right? But a lot of them tell me they internalize it, which is, something that's disturbing to me, because it's like, you gotta remember, you go into a therapist office or you do telehealth, and you're telling them what's going on in your life and everything that you've been through. And they've heard the worst of the worst, right? And imagine that. I can only imagine them internalizing just their own problems and then everybody else's, right? Because you don't get into therapy to become rich. You're not going to be able to, millions and millions of dollars being, especially here in the city in Boston, we have mostly, just regular therapists. You can go to ones that you have to pay, but mostly all of them take insurance. And for the most part, the ones I've had on, like I said, they talk about internalizing it. They won't say it when we're doing the interview, but after they do. And that's for me, something that eats away at me, because they should know that there's help for them too.
I work on an inpatient psych and detox unit, actually, and it is hard not to take some of the stuff home and internalize it, because we're dealing a lot with individuals who have active suicidal ideations, active self-harm, active psychosis, active drug detox, and those are heavy things to be dealing with for a 12 or 13-hour shift. So I would say that we try to protect our mental health, but it is so draining in the moment. I find that I have to step outside and sit in my car for 10 minutes just to decompress and have some silence, because it can be so heavy.
Yeah, I mean, the therapist that I was seeing for a while, she said, "Oh, I talked to my own therapist." I was thinking, well, I think that's great. You should have your own therapist if you are a therapist. I thought that perfectly makes sense. But yeah, it's a really shame that there's a stigma about it. Like, if someone is a patient of their therapist and their therapist tells them, well, I have my own, and they're like, you shouldn't have your own therapist. You should have perfect mental health. That's completely unrealistic. Like, of course, someone who makes their living of hearing other people's most deep and hurtful emotional struggles would need their own way to decompress. So I think every therapist should be perfectly fine with having their own therapist and not feel bad about it at all.
Yeah, but society deems them not allowed to. Remember that. We demonize everything we don't understand. So why do you think we don't know enough about our mental health? Because people don't understand things, so they label things. So they label them, oh, well, you're crazy. You didn't know anything. Well, so why should your therapist have a therapist if he's listening to all my problems all day? People don't think of the end game of everything, and they don't really care. Half of them, they don't care to understand these things. So, and that's the scary part of it all. It's like, you're dumping a lot on these guys, and then they got to go home and deal with them themselves, and then they don't know where to go, and they don't have an outlet, And then Jimmy and I actually, we covered something too, and I met a woman from Utah that said that, the funny thing is when Jimmy said, oh, go home and talk to their wives, I kind of laughed a little bit internally, because the funny fact is that out of 100 people at this group, 18 of them said that they could go talk to their wives. The other 82% of the people said they couldn't talk to their wives, which is a really scary thing, especially those people that are in that field. If they can't even go talk to their own partners, then they have to talk to somebody, when it's a really scary statistic.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. So let me ask this, guys, and I know we all are going to have different answers, but we're going to have a lot of people watching this and a lot of viewers on. What can somebody do to help somebody else out if you have a friend or a loved one come to you and say, "Listen, I have a problem," and I'm not a therapist by any stretch of the imagination. I wouldn't even know, but give us some guidance of like some things you could say to somebody else if they came to you with a problem.
Just listen. I mean,
So I would say,
to be honest
sorry,
with you,
Pete.
the simplest thing you could do is at least listen to them, because I think that's where we all fail the most. Is that, you know, a lot of people don't listen. I mean, I think people forget that it's the first thing is just to listen to them. You may not know where to go, but at least make sure they felt heard, because you don't know if they're suicidal at any point. You know, and this could be their way they're crying for help. You know, these days at least you have places like the helphub.co you can go to, and you can go search through there, and it'll fall under every single thing you need. But, you know, at least listen to them, you know, listen to hear what their problems are, because you never know that may be their way of crying out for help. They could just want you to hear them and validate the fact that they're feeling these way. You know, you don't have to be an expert. I'm not. I have no training whatsoever, and I've listened to 300 plus people at this point. You know, we've had conversation about things I don't even know half of them when we get into them, you know, but I'm listening to them, you know, but I just, you know, like I said, I think people forget that at first. Everybody wants to jump to the hero complex and save the day. A lot of people don't want you to save the day. They just want you to hear them and validate the fact they're having these issues. And then you go from there, you know, and I think that's what we all forget. We all jump to, oh my God, I got to save the day. I got to suggest this. A lot of people don't want to hear all that. They just want you to listen to what they're saying, you know, and it's the simplest thing you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that. Oh, sorry, Lilia, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I was thinking what you said about the hero complex really stuck, because a lot of the time when someone is themselves not a mental health professional and someone they know comes to them talking about their mental health struggles, a lot of time either one of two things happens. Either we get the traditional, oh, just suck it up, it's all in your head, invalidating answer, or we get the savior complex where the person they're talking to, let's say person B, will go ahead and project all their own mindset onto their person, say, oh, just do this, just that. They make themselves the expert of person A's mind in that moment. And they assume that they know exactly what they're thinking. Like, just one example that comes to mind is, when I was younger, I struggled with a lot of substance addiction problems myself. And I had a friend who had quit smoking, and he just assumed that his challenge with smoking was exactly the same as my challenge with like a list of other substances, none of which were tobacco, but they were like, I was like, sit down, I have a list to go over of the things that I'm mixing
Exactly my point.
chemical soup in my blood every day. And, you know, he had totally different motives of why he was smoking. He had a completely different background, completely different mindset, yet went straight to that whole projecting and assuming he knew exactly what I need to do kind of thing. And that can be irritating, feels very invalidating, especially when the person B says they kind of had an easier time with that. Like, I'm really struggling, but now this person is saying, oh, it's easy. You quote, just stop. Okay, for some people, just stop really does work, and that's great. But for some people, it doesn't. And then you start to feel like a shit popsicle because, like, well, I must be defective if I can't just stop, and that sort of thing. So, you know, that's really irritating. And I feel like one issue that this generation has, because there is so much mental health awareness, that has created a whole nother issue of the mental health snake oil salesman. So just like in the early 1900s, there were the snake oil salesmen of, you know, physical tonics. Oh, take this snake oil to cure your stomach cancer or whatever. Cure your cholera, cure your tuberculosis with a drop of this. Now we're getting the mental health equivalent of that, where it feels like everybody on social media is a mental health advocate, and a lot of people are playing the expert card, and they're not experts, they're not therapists, and they're not even experts of themselves a lot of the time. A lot of times, people who themselves are still figuring out how to navigate their own anxiety or mental health challenges, yet they're trying to pose as this expert. And selling mental health snake oil. So I do agree with Pete that the best thing you can do to start is just listen with empathy, non-judgment. I say give them time to express themselves. A lot of the time, what people really want is to simply be heard and not necessarily to get an answer to their question in the immediate moment. I think a lot of people know that their friends and family are not going to give them all the answers right now, and they really just want to know that their feelings are okay to feel and express.
Yeah. Look, I'm gonna piggyback off what both of you guys said, right? I don't I'm not a therapist. I just play one on TV. But what I tell people is, right? I tell people this from the bottom of my heart. Just hold space. Just hold space for somebody. That's all you can do, right? If somebody comes to you and they're going through a mental health crisis, hold space, right? Nobody, if you're going through it and someone comes to talk to you, first off, they trust you, right? And that's a hard thing to do. They trust you with that, right? And that's something that you have to take into effect. They trust you. And that can be a powerful position that you can be in. But if you're going to sit there and try to give them answers, you're trying to get to even have a conversation, right? Just hold space, listen to them, put your arm around them, give them a hug, right? That's one of the biggest things that you can do is hold space, because sometimes that person that's going through it, and I'm telling you, I'm not a therapist, but I come from my heart, from lived experience, from my own, right? Just from myself, from family, from friends. I've seen it. I've been through it. I've been in it. I've been in the shit. I've rolled in the shit. Now I'm out of the shit, right? But the big thing is people need to just hold space, right? Hold space. Just be kind. Just be kind. Don't try to give them an answer, because you know what? 9 times out of 10, if someone's in a mental health crisis and they go to somebody that they trust, the next time, if you're sitting there giving them answers and giving them bullshit and trying to make them feel better, the next time they're not going to go back to anybody. They're probably going to either try to end their life, which we don't want anybody to do, or they're going to hurt themselves. So we don't want that either. So just hold space. Hold space.
Yeah,
I think even more. I think even more so than that, or to add to it, all those things are correct. Like, you want to hold space, you want to be able to listen, but more importantly, you don't want to put your own narrative into it. You don't want to say, "Oh, you're going through this. Well, I went through this, and this is what I did." And "Oh, well, now that you're going through this,"
exactly.
It's unfortunately people. It's even more. It's worse than a hero complex. It's now you're hijacking the narrative, and you're making it about you. And that's almost worse, because now not only are you not listening to them, now you're making them feel invalidated and that they don't matter. And now it's going from bad to worse. Elliot. So, on top of just being a good listener, you don't want to talk. You want to just, as hard as it is in that case, because we all like talking. We're all on a podcast. So everyone likes to talk. But in those instances, it's just so crucial to not only listen, but to not try to interject.
Yeah, projection can be perhaps the most toxic thing around mental health, because, someone just assuming that they know exactly what you're talking about, or exactly how you feel, and making it about them. Like, in fact, this middle section of my comic book is about exactly that. It's like, oh, when I'm stressed, I just drink and smoke weed. You should do the same thing. Or, oh, use this magic mushroom will solve all your problems. Or, oh, try the latest medication that you saw in that commercial for depression. Just I think that the biggest thing is to not project and actually to let the person express themselves.
Yeah, it's great advice, because my goal of this is to open up the realm of what we could do, right? Because somebody's crisis could be very minimal, or somebody's crisis could be at that breaking point, right? And you never know. If somebody comes and says, "Hey, can I come over? I gotta talk to you." Well, it could be something as little as I don't know what's going on in this situation. I don't know how to deal with it, or I am at the biggest crisis of my life and I don't know how to get out of it. And that's kind of where
most of the time,
to have. Go ahead.
Yeah, most of the time when somebody's coming to you, they're either in the start of a mental health crisis or they're at the very end. And the very end means they're coming to you because they want to, they either want to, go to the hospital, they want to, talk to a friend that they're close with, or they're really at the very end where that conversation could be life or death, and it's tough. It's tough because, I've been through it myself. I've been through it, and by the grace of God, I'm still here. Right. But I looked around when I was going through it. My hardest problem was I had people around me that I could count on, but I didn't call anybody. Because it's almost one of those things, that stigma that we have, that we're men. We're supposed to suck it up. We're going to be okay, right? And that was years ago when I was going through it. But now, I would reach out to Maddie. I would reach out to Pete. I would give them a call and say, guys, I need to talk. Somebody you can talk to, somebody you can count on, someone that you can trust. And that doesn't have to be your mom, your dad, your best friend, right? It could be a teacher. It could be, a coworker, someone you trust. It just doesn't have to be family, because sometimes family can be the most, they can be the hottest critic on you, right? And they can be like, well, you're okay. You're okay. The last thing you want to hear is when you're going through it is, you're okay. Everything's going to be okay. Well, it's not going to be okay. That's why I'm coming to you. You know what I mean?
No.
You might not make it to okay. That's
exactly.
Of it.
Yeah.
The challenge of talking to family is that family is the most likely to project, because they are family, especially parents and siblings, those who grew up with you. A lot of time they think that because they saw you growing up, I was there when you were born, they think they know all about you. And of course, the older their child gets, the less their parents actually know what they're thinking. So when someone gets to be a teenager, okay, their parents aren't going to understand everything that goes through their heads. When it comes to adult children who've moved out of the house, sometimes parents will assume that they still completely understand everything that's in your head, even though, like, hey, we don't even live together. I have this whole separate life now. So that's very true. And that's why I think therapists are important to have, because some people will say, oh, therapists are just people pretending to be your friends for money. Like, sometimes you do need that objective person who is not going to assume that they know everything about you, who will listen with open-mindedness to you.
Yeah. Well, the big thing people need to take away from that too, there are just more than talk therapy, right? I've had a lot of people on that, that talk about hypnosis, right? That the mainstream doesn't want you to hear about because it's not talk therapy, right? To me, talk therapy is almost like being stuck in the mud. I'm not saying it's a great start, but sometimes, if you're going to talk therapy for 15 years, there's still an issue there. If you're still going for 15 years, there's different, hypnosis is one of the biggest things. It's not one of those where you think about where you go in and they did the old school watch in front of your eyes. And, I've talked to guys that do it and girls that do it. And the biggest thing is they can get to the root of your trauma in 5 or 6 sessions, which is powerful, but the mainstream, what do you say, Maddie?
Style of therapy that therapists do called EMDR, and it is kind of like hypnosis.
Yeah.
You do the tapping, you do the bilateral like movement with your brain. Like you can have they may wave something in front of you, and it's to desensitize you from trauma. There's also dialectical behavioral therapy, which is used a lot of times with like bipolar disorder and borderline personality disorder. Things like that, because it's really concrete. It's like, this is happening here, the skill, there's a workbook, there's proofs, it's very concrete. Then there's CBT therapy, where it's like thought, behavior, action, and you can trace them, and they can teach you skills to kind of trace those in the moment. Just a ton of different styles of therapy, like Uncle Jimmy is saying. So I think it's important to research which kind would be best for you. And try them out. Just try them out.
And the big thing too is with therapists, right? Sorry, with therapists, you may go to your first one, you're not going to like him or her. You may go to your second, third, fourth, fifth, right? Find one that works for you. Find one that works for you. Don't just get stuck on one just because, hey, that's the first therapist I found. Find one that works for you, because I find if you find one that works for you, you're going to do the work, right? And I say this all the time with mental health. There's going to be work that has to be done. You have to do work on yourself, right? I say it all the time. They don't just give you these pills and it fixes everything, right? You have to do work with it. Work, you know, and it's just not, we're going to prescribe you this and then you're going to be okay. No, there's coping techniques. There's mechanisms that you can use that you learn, right? It's just not, we're going to give you a medication and it all goes away. So find a therapist that works for you. That's my big take to a lot of people out there. It may take you 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 therapists, but find the one that works for you. And I can promise you, do the work and it will be the best thing that you've ever done.
Yeah, I say don't forget about the alternative therapists, like you mentioned, hypnotherapy and somatic therapy. I'm actually certified in somatic therapy practices where you use the mind-body connection to free yourself from trauma. That's extremely powerful because that teaches us mind-body awareness, which is the root of a lot of self-care work. A lot of the quote self-care they talk about on social media has become a buzzword that's starting to lose meaning.
No doubt about it.
Because why overused, but really the root of that is mind-body awareness. Be aware of how your mindset affects your body and your body affects your mind. That's very powerful. So activity-based like music therapy, pet therapy, dance therapy, bibliotherapy, which is basically what Elliot was talking about earlier, how writing the story of his comic book was therapeutic. That's what bibliotherapy is about. You know, writing and literature as a form of therapy. Like for me personally, I'm a very active person. I'm very hands-on. I don't learn anything unless I could actually do it physically in some way or another. So for me, the activities are where it's at. For me, I could talk to a therapist forever and get nowhere. But if I can apply what we talk about to something I actually do with my body, then that is a game changer for me. So don't be afraid to explore those.
I completely agree with you on our peer support groups and our in-person ones. We do a lot of activities because there's something to be said about the movement in your body while you're trying to talk about things that can be like, it can help you talk, but can also be so healing. So we do a lot of activity-based stuff too. So I like that point.
Yeah, I agree. And I was going to move into the next thing about outlets, right? Like where we could go and what we can do to kind of just help ourselves if you don't feel that talking to somebody is in your best interest. Because a lot of people don't want to say anything, right? They don't know where to turn. They don't know who to even start with. So some of them will just look in the mirror and be like, all right, I'm going to try to fix myself. Obviously, it may or may not work. But what do you guys in your experiences feel could be some outlets for people where they could go, what they could do to self-help if they needed to?
So the biggest thing is, for me, I've used it for myself as a lifeline. And I say it all the time. If you don't have anybody like you feel like you can't talk to or trust and you're going through a mental health crisis, you can always call or text 988. 988 is a great place. It's a great place to start. I used to, I don't want to say I used to use it. I still use it from time to time, but at 2, 3 in the morning, right, when you wake up and you're going through it and you can't get back to sleep and you just need someone to talk with, right, and you're going through it, that 988 is fully staffed 24/7, 365, right? And that's a big thing for me. If you don't know where to start and you don't feel like you can talk to anybody or you don't have confidence in talking to anybody, 988, it's all confidential. You can text it or you can call it. Someone always answers or someone will text you right back immediately. I think that's one of the biggest things.
That's awesome. And before I let everybody else finish this, I want to shout out Ashley. She was actually supposed to be on tonight, but she works for 988. She's an operator. So her perspective is very unique. I had her as a guest on my podcast before, and the stories she was telling are absolutely incredible. And they don't take any personal gain out of it, but those are the true heroes, right? Somebody who could talk somebody out. It is unbelievable what she was saying. And I wish she was here tonight, but 988 is awesome. So whoever wants to jump in next.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, that really is amazing.
I mean, I would say that Oh, I'm sorry, Maddie.
No, go ahead.
It's tough to say because everybody's different. Everybody's anxiety manifests differently. Everybody goes about life differently. My interests are different than Maddie's interests, than Jimmy's, Pete's, Lilia's. We all have different ways of going about life. So there's no one size fits all situation of this. It's, if somebody likes to exercise, if somebody likes to read, if someone likes to artistically express themselves, if someone likes to play video games, Someone likes to, go to animal shelters. There's a million and one different ways to, I don't want to say cope, because that's not necessarily the right terminology. It's what you do in order to feel your best self. So whatever that is for you, figure out what that is and do it. And ultimately, therapy isn't necessarily for everybody, in the sense that if you don't accept that you need it, or you don't want to do it, if you're doing it just for the sake of, okay, someone said I need to go to therapy, so I'm going to do it, you're not going to benefit from it. If you're doing it with the intention of, there's something that I feel I need to improve on, then, oh, that's cool. Something you need to improve on, then you're going to go into it with the right attitude and the right mindset. And then all of a sudden, whatever you're choosing to use as your quote unquote coping mechanism, whether it's, again, like art, music, exercise, what have you, then that on top of the work you're putting in therapy will lead to more gains in terms of mental health progress. And it's a journey. It's not just, oh, I did this and I'm better. Oh, I started exercising, I'm better. I started going to therapy and I'm better. No, it's it's a journey. It's a process. Some days are better than others, but ultimately the goal is make every day as a good day as you can have that day. Doesn't mean that every day is going to be a good day, and some days are going to be bad, and that's okay. But accepting that that's going to happen and actively working to move forward in spite of that is what'll help in the long run.
No, that's a great point, that everyone's interests are different, but I think the most important part is to find something that connects with you. Now I had a page about that on my comic book as a demonstration. But yeah, okay, yes. This was this part, which is working hard on goals in harmony with a healthy why. So healthy why, because there's a thing that a lot of musicians do, especially metal musicians, like in my genre with Carcaza, is that a lot of people become heavy metal musicians because they've had a lot of mental health struggles growing up in their childhoods, and then that becomes their outlet. But then sometimes the outlet can become as toxic as the struggle you are facing in the first place if you're not doing it with a healthy why, your purpose. Check in on what's your purpose. For example, a lot of the time for performing artists, their goal is you and you and you, you're gonna love me. What starts out as feeling like healthy activity to release your pent-up emotional tension can become a lot of people-pleasing, a lot of competitiveness, and a lot of just trying to be the best and being the top and getting attention and stuff like that. So I think you have to always check in with yourself on why exactly you're doing it. Okay, is this truly adding to my life, or is it trying to fit me into some kind of mold? Am I doing this to try to be the best version of myself, or to try to be what someone else wants me to be? Am I trying to fit some standard? So I think that's really important to check in with yourself about, and have this brutal self-honesty about, am I just trying to people please? And of course, to just be honest with yourself and with other people. Let's say someone suggests you should do yoga. Okay, go ahead and try yoga. But if after a couple months it's still not resonating with you, you don't have to insist on doing it just because your friend said yoga cured their anxiety. Feel free to move on to an outlet. Give yourself permission. I also do always want to raise some awareness of the unsung heroes about all this, which are those in the animal kingdom. Because I myself, my dog is a certified therapy dog, and I've just found that she really works wonders on people to reduce their anxiety. I just feel like animals help us learn how to be more human, because at this point, humans have gotten really caught up in technology. A lot of the time, a lot of us have a hard time knowing who we are without our digital devices. We're so influenced by social media. Now AI is becoming a thing. AI can be a great brainstorming buddy, but it can also get you lost in how much of my own ideas are truly mine, which are how much actually came from Chat GPT or Grok or something. I feel like animals are a great way to reset into our own primal instinct. We are also members of the animal kingdom, so I feel like they have a lot that they can teach us.
I feel like AI
That is
gets a bad
true.
rap these days, by the way.
Yeah,
I think a
Yeah.
lot of people don't use it the right
yeah,
way.
it's
So
how you use it, you know.
it's the same thing. You
There's
apply to
a
everything. Think about it. You do the same way. If you don't use it the right way, it doesn't make any sense, you know. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Yeah, of course, because AI can be a fantastic brainstorming buddy. And also, to be totally honest, from the mental health perspective, if you're using an AI that can, answer mental health related questions, if you just have like a quick concern, there is nothing wrong with kind of brainstorming with the AI about it, because as long as you know that it's not replacing actual human conversation, but like, hey, it's 2 a.m. Okay, I don't want to wake up my friends with this. And it's just a fairly quick question that I have, or even if it's not a quick question, there are some things that you really can brainstorm with an AI about that are genuinely helpful. I think you need the healthy perspective that this doesn't mean that because you have AI, you don't need to actually talk to people, test your ideas with other people, but this is simply another resource that you can use, and it is all about how you use it.
Well, I
I
signed
wanted
a
to share
partnership. Sorry, Maddie, go ahead.
there's a number you can call that is peer run. It's like 988. It's in a lot of
Yeah.
states. It's called Warm Line. You can go to warmline.org and see if it's in your state. And you can call and talk to somebody about these things. And I'm pretty sure it's run by peer support. So it's just another great resource.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. Yeah.
I was going to comment on your point about 2 a.m. I just signed a partnership with an app called PsychPal. Okay, so like it's AI, but it doesn't replace your therapy. The idea of it is that it's not your cookie cutter kind of thing. Because a lot of people, when they hear AI, they automatically shut down. This one's a little bit different though. It's built towards you, the user. So like it'll talk to you in the ways that you understand. It is in no way replacing your therapy. In fact, it takes notes for your therapist that you can send to your therapist, and it'll track your moods and all these other kind of things like that. And it'll have a conversation in the way that say whatever the user's need is. It'll talk to them in the way that they understand. Because the guy that invented it, Jules, had did it for his daughter, and he was like, the same thing. He was looking like, how do I find answers to help her better? So he actually built this app around it for her originally. And some of the ideas that he added into these things are actually things that she said too, like adding a scheduler and things like that. All these really cool things that it's doing these days. Like I said, I think people give it a bad rap because it's not being used in the right manner. But from what I've seen so far, and if some people have used it so far, they love it. It's awesome because it's like it caters to the way they see things. So like they can go look and talk to it, but it's not giving them any thoughts. It's telling them, it's talking to them the way they understand. And you could talk, text, and you can send pictures of this thing, and it'll tell you how to interpret it in the way that you'll understand it, though. So I really think that AI is going somewhere, but I just like, I know people like Jules are working hard on these kind of things because he was looking at it. He said that he was trying to go away from the fact, with the whole chat GPT situation where the young gentleman ended up going to kill himself because he was talking to it. And then AI is like, oh, well, let me tell you how to do that. So he's worked hard on these kind of things like that too for people to, so like if you're up at 2 a.m., you want to talk to somebody, you just pop on your little app really quick. You can talk to it, but it'll explain to it the way you'll understand it. Instead of you suggesting things to you, it's just testing the temperature to see where you're at, and it'll track it for your therapist. So like if you're having these thoughts and you can't remember what you said, it'll remember, and then you can set it up to email your therapist. So like if your next session or things like that too, it'll give the notes to them so they know what the things that you were thinking about. Because a lot of times, I'll wake up like half asleep and people are like, well, I've had a conversation with you. I'm like, I don't remember that conversation, honestly. They're like, oh, you were like so tired. You don't even remember calling me? I'm like, no, no, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know what I said to you. What did I say to you? Well, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So, just wanted to say that.
Yeah, I think that's like we should destigmatize. Like, if you want to ask AI a mental health question and it's a genuinely good platform, you shouldn't feel bad about, oh, I'm guilty for it. But at the same time, just like any tools are all about how you use them. So just be aware, it's not replacing your own brain. It's not replacing a therapist or a friend or anything like that. It is what it is. It's a tool for you to use.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I know
Definitely.
two other outlets we have now is, you can head over to Calamity Comics and buy Elliot's comic. You never know. And you can also go over to Amazon and get Lilia's.
Yeah.
Lilia, the Inner Demon Crusher over at Amazon. Two
And
new
we
outlets
don't,
right
we don't
there.
use
Yeah.
any AI, so and Mark knows my perspective
Right,
on
yeah,
AI.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
when you can just
actually,
have creative.
I made mine interactive because at the end of it, the finisher is that you write the epilogue, you write the ending of the story. It has these prompts like picture yourself taking action towards your passion. You can draw or write it. So, because I'm an activity oriented person, I like interaction. So, I made my own comic interactive so you can try some of that bibliotherapy for yourself.
And Lilia, are you making this a series or is this just a one-off?
Yeah, I do plan on making a series. That's why it's called Lilia the Inner Demon Crusher. That's the brand. Workaholism versus food porn. That's the first installment. I just haven't nailed down exactly what I want to make the next installment of, but I was really thinking about something involving a person who has extreme food anxiety issues and how her dog and cat help her work through that by showing, hey, I just eat my food and don't judge myself for it. Kind of using the animals as a way of helping us learn how to be more human, in touch with ourselves. So that's what I was thinking along the lines of. Another idea I had was dealing with the demon of craving and addiction. That's another one I've been thinking of. So yeah, I do have ideas for the next editions.
I think the addiction would be kind of cool to see what you come up with.
Yeah.
I already like what I've seen from the book that you've been showing me. I really like the idea of the comic book theory because I don't like reading like books a lot of times. So I'm a comic book guy. I just interviewed a cartoonist that's a Britain one. She's an award-winning cartoonist. Gemma Correll came on the show, and we talked about her new book, Anxiety Land. And the way she did it was almost similar to what you guys are doing with the comics. I like it because it applies to me because I'm a big comic book guy. I like reading them, stuff like that. I feel like it applies better to me. And I think it's a great way that she went about it because she explains her anxiety in the way that, makes it more easier for people to understand that more people like me that like books like that, where we can apply to it a little more. And then she goes through it, and hers is almost set up like an amusement park. So like she has the different themes of everything. It's like the inner cover of the book is literally the whole mapping of her life, and it's her own memoir, but it's done in a comic book form. Like, and the way it goes about it is like she illustrates the different feelings she's having with her anxiety, which I thought was really cool because, like I said, for me, I could look at these words all day, man, but I can't do a lot of books like that. Like, they're hard for me to read. But the comic books, I'm there, dude. You got me hooked. I'll start reading that all day. And when I started previewing it, because I got to preview it ahead of time, I thought it was really cool, though, because like she's going through it and she's breaking it down and making it more for the visual learners versus the people that can read the information and take it in, for all of us having, we all learn in different kind of ways. So, like some people are hands-on, you guys were saying too. I thought it was a great idea. So I love what you guys are doing in the comic books, honestly. I love it. I honestly 100% behind that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
don't
sure.
you feel like people who struggle with mental health challenges are more likely to prefer pictures over text? I feel like I see that correlation a lot.
I mean, like one thing that I was very cognizant of when, I'm not an artist, I'm just the writer and creator, but what we were very cognizant of when we were getting covers going is, you guys know what variant covers are, right? So it's where you have the main cover is your main issue, and then you have variant covers of just like alternate art, cover art for the same issue. So what I was very cognizant of is when we made the first issue was to have different cover artists depict anxiety in different ways on the covers. So that way, somebody who is walking by a booth at a comic convention or looking at our website, you might see one of the covers and think, I don't know what that feels like, but I know what that feels like. And I relate to that.
Because I like that idea.
Everybody experiences it differently. And my anxiety might be different than your anxiety. So we didn't want to necessarily alienate somebody by, having one type of anxiety showed. We wanted to express it in different ways. And that's the power of the visual medium and why, it's an underutilized tool, in my opinion, when it comes to mental health, because there's so much that you can do with it. You don't need like millions of dollars for that movies put out in order to create a story. You just need pen and paper and an artist, because that's not me. I can't draw, but I can tell them what we want generally.
I love the idea of the variant covers thing. I really do, Elliot. I think what you're doing is a really great idea because you're attracting the certain person or grabbing the attention of the people. Because, like, you made a really good point there that everybody experiences differently. So when I started Pete vs. Anxiety, that was the thing I started exploring. Was like, you know what? I wonder what other people experience these things like. So when I invited people to come on the show, I was looking for the unique perspectives of everything, and that was one of the questions I was asking a lot of people. So, okay, how does it present to you versus someone else? You know, and we get into it really deep about that because I wanted people to understand that one point that you keep saying is that, you know, everybody experiences whatever insert differently than everybody else. Like, you know, I had a musician come on. We had no idea this woman experienced BPD, you know, and then she just told us, oh, yeah, well, you know, and then explain what her perspective is now versus a few other people I've had on since then. Their experiences have been a little bit different, but that was the whole idea was that, you know, hey, listen, you may not experience it the same exact way, but, you know, other people get it too. So I like that you're trying to, you know, appeal to everybody because, you know, especially the variant cover thing, man. I'm like, now I want to get them all just because, you know, that's just me. I'm a collector, so I love doing that kind of stuff. So I love ideas like that too, 100%.
Thank you. And I mean that. Oh, I'm sorry, Lilia, go for it.
Oh yeah. I was just saying it's great to hear that you appreciate it because you know it was my first time making a graphic novel of any sorts, and I was like, "What am I doing?" You know, for me, it was therapeutic in a challenging kind of way because I'm like I have all that self-doubt about it. So when it finally comes out, and people appreciate it. You know, I am not the best artist in the world. I created through a combination of photography that I then stylized through computer editing and some illustrations and graphics. So I was like, oh, well, people like it and they really do resonate with it. So that's great. And I can't wait to read Elliot's too.
Thank you. I mean, it's we did C2E2 for the first time a few weeks ago, and that was essentially our first big show, and we were blown away by the reception we received. But more importantly than that was the genuine interactions we had with people at our table who we'd have someone come up, we'd give them the pitch, and then, you know, we had people crying and just genuinely talking about, you know, oh, you know, this happened to my family, or I've been through this, or I recall one person was at our table, they read the book cover to cover and they were shaking and they put it down and said that they can't handle what we wrote and walked away. And that was it was almost validating that we had these interactions with people, that these stories matter, especially at comic conventions. If you guys go to them, there aren't as many creators making comic books. If you go through like Artist Alley, it's a lot of like artwork, but not a lot of independent comic books. So to have not only our own comic book, but one that's about such an important topic, it resonated really well with a lot of people. And all of a sudden we had people just telling us about their stories. And that was the whole reason why we created this book, was to open up the discussion around this. And the best moment was just being able to give people hugs and say that it's okay, you're not alone and you are loved. And that's the whole reason why, you know, it's, to me, I did it as a form of therapy for myself, but I created it to help others. And as a result, that we have this story, this company, and this series that is out there for people, for everybody to relate to in some way. Yeah, and if we can at least help one person, then we did our job.
Yeah, exactly. I think you have a really good point there. If you can help one person, that was the whole goal of the show too. So it's just like one story. If this story hits one person's heart, you've already won the battle immediately right there, you know? And I think the reason it took off so much for comics and things, to think about it, like back in the 90s, like how many people you knew watched anime? Not a lot of people, because everybody would make fun of you. But now it's exploded so much, and there's so much mainstream, and now everybody wants to get into this thing. That's why it connects so well with people, like comics or graphic novels, all these things. Just think about it. That's the big craze now. Everybody wants to watch, oh, what's the latest anime people are watching, you know? And then people start debating what's the big three and things like that, because it resonates with a lot of us, man. And you know, that's what it is. It's because we enjoy those, like the manga books and things that you read. I prefer those over mostly everything else I was reading too, you know. And that's, I think, is what you're grabbing the attention of a lot of people. So it's great that, you know, you're doing it for yourself. At the same time, other people are saying, okay, well, I'm not alone. Elliot here feels the same way I do in some way, you know, but you're appealing it to the way that I like it, you know. And in collectors in mind, like I said, the variant cover thing is, you're already going to kill it right there. You know, I had an artist on the show though. She had wrote a book called No More Monsters Under the Bed, and it was directed towards kids, but at the same time, we know a lot of kids can't read books, so the adult readings of the book are both teaching them how to emotionally regulate, but they don't know that's what they're doing at the same time. Like they're reading this book to them, teaching them about these different subjects and things like that too. And it was very interesting to hear how she was doing it. I was like, that's pretty cool. You think about it, you put it in a children's book. We all read stories to our kids, when they were younger and things like that. People that have kids, or when we were kids, that was our favorite thing, was that one favorite storybook, and the way she's putting it, it's interesting because she's going to go into other topics, and things. So I think it's really interesting to see, and I'm looking forward to seeing what y'all come up with, though. Honestly, man, I'm definitely going to check out both of your comics because I'm definitely a big comic guy. So I'm curious to see where y'all are going with these things too, because I think it'll be very interesting, especially like I said, the addiction thing. I think will be really interesting because
exciting.
The monster to be. These are so many different types of addiction, though. So you can make that into like they can almost have their own Legion of Doom, or if you want to go the other side of it, you can have your own team of Avengers that battle those addictions and things like that too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like something like that. There's so many different ways you can take this thing. So I'm looking forward to seeing what y'all come up with.
And the community is great, right? So that's why I wanted to put this together because, obviously Pete and Uncle Jimmy, you guys haven't been on my podcast before. You have your own thing, but everybody else has been a guest, and it gets so much feedback because the community, like-minded people are drawn to you, right? And that's why I wanted to put this out, because at least it's a start, right? We could at least maybe help one person or two people down the road. And now a community, I never thought that I'd have, 5 other people besides me doing this. And this has been an awesome experience for me. But I love the fact that I can get different perspective on it because, like I said, it's a community and we're all a part of it. And we're all positive moving forward. And that's the biggest thing. The like-mindedness is amazing.
Yeah.
I agree.
Like I said in the beginning, there's 6 of us on here. There's 6 different communities now forming a super community, right? So 6 becomes 1, but when we leave, we still have our 6.
Right.
So it's so powerful that we're able to start building these communities together separately, but also merging them and coming together so people can see that, hey, you know what? It's okay not to be okay. But again, if that's the case, reach out to somebody, talk to somebody, So I love it. I appreciate everybody that came on. You guys can find me on the Voice of the Voices. That's my favorite thing to do, right, Pete?
Yeah.
Pete might have some Voice of the Voiceless.
You gotta do it right. You gotta do it the right way.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so what we'll do right now is we'll have everybody say where they can find you at. I will link everything in the description of the YouTube video. So all the apps, everything we talked about, the comic books, the 988, everything will be linked in the description. But before we wrap things up, I just want you guys to tell us where we could find you individually, and then I will put all your links in the description for YouTube. So whoever wants to start.
My website is jesupport.org. We're on all our socials for the nonprofit are linked there. Voice to Voiceless is on all streaming services. And my personal page where I advocate is just Maddie Andrews.
Voice of the Voiceless.
I was waiting for you to do that
There you
too.
go.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
Well, you guys can find Pete versus Anxiety pretty much every find your podcast at. Voice of the Voiceless, me and Maddie. New episodes drop every Saturday. Pete versus Anxiety drops Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I do 3 days a week. I have so many backlog of interviews. It's just crazy. But you can find me on everything social too. X all the way down to TikTok, Spotify, all the way down to Pandora Radio, man. I'm everywhere. And I did that for that reason, just so everybody can't say, well, I only use Spotify or I use the Apple. Oh, I'm already there. It's so late. So
That's awesome.
You can find us at calamitycomics.net. You can find us online at Calamity Comics Official. And we will also be at Modern Age Comics in Algonquin, Illinois on May 2nd, Free Comic Book Day from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. So if anybody's in the Algonquin area, feel free to come by and check us out.
Lilia?
Yeah, I myself, I have a website, liliademoncrusher.com. On Amazon, you can find this comic book by searching Lilia, the Inner Demon Crusher, Workaholism versus Food Porn. And I did send you the links to both of those, so it's easy for you to put on YouTube. And if you're on Substack, I actually started a Substack blog recently, which is substack.com/Inner Demon Crusher. So you can check that out if you want to be on my blog. I post it every week, so it's a weekly blog that gets sent to your email.
Awesome.
Perfect.
And I am the One Fun Guy podcast, guys. Uncle Jimmy, go ahead. What do you got to say?
You go. I was going to tell everybody where they can find me, but I'm just
No.
everybody's favorite uncle. You can find me anywhere.
That's
Everywhere
awesome.
and anywhere.
So I just wanted to say first and foremost, thank you all for taking the time to do this, right? It means the world to me that you guys were willing to come on my podcast and do it. So I want to say thank you for taking the time to do that. And I really want to try to get this moving along in the future. So I think what I'm going to do is we'll have another episode where we talk about maybe some other things that we didn't touch in, because we were just scratching the surface tonight, guys, right? Like obviously
we could go on forever.
Right. So I think that with the positive feedback that we're getting in the YouTube stuff, that we'll plan down the road. Maybe in a few months we'll try to get everybody back, and we'll see what's happening, and we'll catch up with everybody and what they have going on, if that works for you guys.
I'm down.
Always.
Works for us.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, everybody. I'm the One Fun Guy podcast. I want to thank all my guests again. You guys were great tonight. This video will be up on YouTube either later tonight or tomorrow morning, and I will link everybody in the description. So everybody have a great rest of your weekend. Enjoy your Sunday and have a blessed week. Take care, everybody.
Thank you so much.